We are live.
All right.
Hello, African Crossroads. Good morning, Paul. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm caffeinated.
Oh, nice.
I'm having a great fun experience being on Instagram Live for the first time.
For the very first time.
Officially.
Yeah.
To be honest, we practiced yesterday with our own communities, and
it was fun.
It was definitely fun.
This Instagram thing is kind of addictive.
It can be. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we're both here and also
there.
over there.
Nice.
That's great.
Technology is a fascinating thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, welcome, African Crossroads. Those of you that are joining, I love this community so much, and I'm so excited for us to be part of this takeover. We're taking over African Crossroads. How does that feel?
It feels like, really? Us? Us doing this?
Yeah.
Also, love African Crossroads and the work that African Crossroads is doing. Thank you so much for having us to represent African voices and creative works, and to hopefully invite some interesting conversation today.
Yeah, and African Crossroads has knows a thing or two about using art and storytelling to change minds and hearts, and we're going to be talking about a podcast and a movement that we're trying to do to help challenge our old and new ideas of masculinity, things that we grew up with, things that shaped us, and that comes from both our experience in trying to figure this shit out. So we do not have the answers. We have more questions than answers.
So many questions. Actually,
we're both on this journey to figure out who we are and how men carry themselves and how men bring themselves. Are we talking to anyone, or are we talking to ourselves?
People, no.
Oh, nice. We got people online.
We have people watching. Hello to all the people out there.
Hey, Ri, Kuyu, Sherry, and so this started by a novel that I came to you telling you that I want to write, and I actually got the inspiration of the environment from being in African Crossroads in November of 2019 in Mombasa. And then traveling through Diani and seeing the beaches there gave me the inspiration of learning more about Swahili culture and how close it was actually with Egyptian Islamic culture. And so I related so much to Kenya in a way that I did not think I'd relate to. And that kind of brought up the idea of what if the main character of the novel that's trying to figure out this whole manhood thing grew up in Lamu town or Lamu Island in Kenya, where there's no internet. There's no, but it was in the 80s, so there was no internet anyways.
Yeah, in most places, except for those lucky few who had access to such technologies.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us,
there was
no internet.
Yeah, but they also had no cars, very cut off, and so the hero in the story is growing with all these ideas about what it means to be a man, from his father, from his uncle, from bullies at school. And then I came to Paul and I was like, Paul, I'm writing this thing, and you got me really excited to take it to the next level and start a whole podcast. So let's start by, what was exciting about this story that allowed someone like you to, give it attention and be part of it.
For sure. So I remember having my mind blown when I first learned about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. This idea that in all of our psychology and our psyches, we have all these different archetypes, and the hero's journey, which we'll get into in a second, is something that's found in pretty much every story out there. This idea of a person being called to do something, having to face dragons and demons and come out changed on the other side by answering the call. And so
and you're all answering the call by joining this live, by the way.
That's true.
So thank you.
Thanks for doing that. Thanks for joining us. And so personally, when I first realized of this model, the hero's journey, this idea that all the stories that have ever been written are actually coming from our own brains, I started becoming very interested in books that really represent this. And then Omar, when you came to me with the outline, I saw a clear, archetypal model for a hero's journey, which is very fresh. So I kind of saw this as the hero's journey for a new generation. Got me pretty stoked.
Yeah, and it seems the more we think about archetypes, the more we realize how they determine what we, how we carry ourselves and what it is that we try to do. And so we realized that a lot of power comes in like stories,
Yes.
our own stories, and a lot of the book actually covers, or like Maskat Zimunika, who's the protagonist here, that grows up in Lamutan in Kenya, and then goes on in later parts to the US and joins the Navy and like goes through a lot of crazy experiences, but he's really controlled by these ideas of what it means to be a man in his mind. And that's kind of what we want to dissect. We're gonna be inviting some guests, but we also want to invite you guys to join us. So how about we start by understanding like how we think about masculinity. Like if you guys can just type in the chat, like what is the first word that comes to mind when we say masculinity, and that can be anything. What is the first? Doing it for the applause. Thank you for joining us. We're doing this for the applause too. Although we can't hear it. And the coffee.
Yeah, it comes with coffee.
Yeah. Claricel, tough. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, tough is definitely what comes to mind for a lot of people when they think about masculinity.
Yeah. Sometimes, we feel like we really need to be tough, and that's the way to be a man. The digital earth. I love your handle. The digital earth. What comes to mind when you think of masculinity? That's the question right now. So we have tough. Aggressive is a big one that comes to mind a lot. Being aggressive, being not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. This idea of needing to push, like getting your way is the only option. Is another thing that comes to mind when people think of masculinity. Again, it's another one that is kind of on the shadow side, or like a more negative aspect. The conditioning is real. Sherry, we absolutely agree. When we were practicing this yesterday, and we were getting some answers, I was thinking about my own sort of journey in terms of understanding what it means to be a man and what masculinity meant to me when I was a kid, when I was an adolescent, and even in my young adulthood versus now, and it's changed so much in terms of what it really means to be like an authentic, strong, powerful human that embodies masculinity. What does that look like in its gold? And so
it's interesting, this idea of like gold versus shadow, right? And so shadows are things that we might have shame about, or something that lies more in like our darker side of our soul that we don't necessarily feel comfortable expressing. So that's kind of like being tough or aggressive, or the violence that comes from the ideas around masculinity is part of our shadow.
Yeah.
But then sometimes when people start talking about toxic masculinity, I kind of don't like that term personally, because I feel like it puts masculinity now in like this. It also categorizes it or conditions us to think that masculinity means toxic. Therefore, we let go of a lot of the gold of masculinity.
Yes.
Which is accessible to both males and females, I think. But
absolutely.
But guys can still be strong without being violent. I think can still be assertive without being dominating necessarily.
Sure. And can succeed without necessarily being aggressive or taking.
Succeed by giving. Like there's one of the archetypes is the king, right? The king that provides for a whole community, and then the shadow of the king can be a tyrant too.
Yes.
So it goes both ways. And I think this spectrum is what we need to start talking about, because just putting masculinity in like a toxic bucket, and before putting it in like holier than thou bucket, like neither of them work. And that's why I think both the previous generations explanation, and then now like more with the politically correct conversation that's going on of like masculine is bad, feminine is good. No, that's also like kind of very polarizing.
Very polarizing,
in my opinion.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like any sort of imbalance creates if we want to talk about like toxicity, is the idea of imbalance.
Yeah.
As opposed to bringing balance.
Yeah.
I see. We have a few new
Ali Saim and Ruba Eilam. To be kind is to be strong. Thank you, Ruba.
Oh, I see. We have Alec Martini. joining
Hey,
us.
Alec.
Giving you a shout out. For those who are joining us, the question we're asking is, what comes to mind when you hear the word masculinity?
Yeah. What are some of the thoughts or the adjectives like characteristics of masculinity that come to your mind? Maybe we should shift the question a little bit and ask you guys about like what is where do you get the ideas of like when you think of masculinity, who pops up in your mind as a definition of that? Like someone in your life, or maybe like a celebrity.
We have one answer: necessary evil.
Necessary evil.
I would like
That's
to hear.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually would like to hear more on that one.
Yeah.
Necessary evil. Two interesting words put together.
My dad.
Doing it for the applause. Okay. All right. Yeah, fathers.
Fathers can be necessary evils.
Yeah.
We cover that quite a bit in our podcast.
We absolutely do. It's a very important and very complicated relationship.
And by the way, I want to do a shout out to our last episode was actually Paul very bravely interviewing his dad and going into where I think no man or woman, like no son or daughter want to go. And so that was episode 10. And you guys can see all our published chapters and podcasts now at Gumption, Gumption .inc /welcome.
Welcome.
And then you'll be able to leave your email and you'll get like our Sunday updates. But I highly recommend listening to episode number 10 where Paul interviews his dad. Dad also Kui. Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. So someone who comes to mind when we think of a positive role model in masculinity.
I don't know much about him. Idris Elba is.
He's an actor.
Oh, okay.
Plays very like benevolent, strong, kind of serious roles, but he's definitely like he's beloved by so many people. He's it's like I would see it as like an archetype. He plays archetypal, like positive masculine roles in like television. I haven't seen any movies of his, but I've seen them on TV. Best podcast ever. Well, we want to thank you.
Doing it for the applause.
We're doing it for you. We are doing it for you. Thank you so much.
Well, should we start?
Actually, I'll turn the question to you. So, who comes to mind when you think about, an archetypal, role model for representing masculinity?
I keep thinking of like Ed Norton. I don't know why. Just because of the amount of movies that he's done around that. Specifically Fight Club, like I see Fight Club goes into the heart of it, and it's one of my favorite movies. But between both him and Brad Pitt, it's like the dark side and like the gold, and it's like both the sensitive individual, but then the sensitive individual has gotten too weak and like needs to go back to his masculinity, which is Tyler Durden, and like wake up and start, rebelling and start using his strength to actually fulfill his purpose in life. And get out of like the kind of like weak consumerism, unopinionated, politically correct state that we're in. And so I find, whenever I think of a role model for masculinity, I don't go to Tyler Durden, but I go to Tyler Durden and Ed Norton together, that character together, which is what the movie is about.
Right on.
Yeah. What about you, Paul?
So I guess when I think about someone who represents like the gold of masculinity, I would say probably the former president of Uruguay.
Oh.
We think about world leaders, especially world leaders, probably since the beginning of time, there's always been an expectation of dominance, to show strength, to make enemies fear, to rule the public with, with a certain kind of strength. And even in like going to more modern times where there's democracy, there's still this idea of like political leaders being ruthless, especially when it comes to war and conquest and all these things. And this president actually showed up for his country in a very I think his nickname was like grandfather or uncle. He had like both. He was a strong president, but he served his people. This idea of like leading by service, as opposed to leading by power or leading by coercion. leading by like I'm going to dedicate my life for people of a country. Number one, it brings people together. Talk about like an alternate way of doing leadership, which we don't see too often in the political sphere. This idea of really serving the people. So
and I think in a lot of these role models, it requires a certain sense of self-awareness to be able to lead people in a new way, and a lot of what we're seeing, I think, from leaders that have caused a lot of devastation in the world is because and what we're seeing certainly in the US these days is like this polarization and people just projecting their fears onto others, and that's what I think men do a lot, and that's what gets translated into domestic violence and rape, and a lot of these things is just like it comes from a deep sense of actually like shame and insecurity that are unattended in society. And when we see someone like the president of Uruguay, who has obviously like spent a lot of time with himself, getting to know like his values and understand this like shadow part, which we are like terrified to see these days, and especially with social media, it's just really hard because we're all locked in a corner with an algorithm that's giving us more of what we like, and so we're trying to kind of challenge that also with our show and bring opposing ideas, because this world that we live in now is just like is very righteous, and that's I think one of the topics we want to share some stories about today, right?
Totally. And just to like add on to that a little bit, there's a fear for us to even look at our own shadows, our own hearts, by the way. Okay, well, we're hearting you right back. Absolutely. Because in the world of social media, there's a lot of shaming, a lot of blaming, a lot of finger pointing, canceling, whatever you want to call it. We feel this pressure to do double duty in putting on our best and hiding our shadow. And when we hide our shadow, we have no means to take a look at it and see what actually needs attending to, what actually needs healing. So I would love to see a social media world where people can be themselves and have some compassion, and rather than pointing out people's failures, supporting them and encouraging them to heal. Again, it's not about ignoring them. It's not about saying like that doesn't matter. No, this shit absolutely matters. But what is our response to our flaws as human beings?
Yeah.
Not just for each other, but for ourselves. Which is where it kind of starts.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And so the shadow is one of the topics that we dive into, and we actually had a professional, like a mental health professional, come in on episode 7 and talk to us about that. And I think a quick definition, if you're not familiar with shadow, it's like everything you disown about yourself, and that's usually what people like start pointing fingers. And so when we disown certain parts that we're ashamed of, so let's say I got fired from a job and I'm like feeling so much shame, and then I'm like people are using that against me somehow, or making me aware of it rather than supporting me to find a new job or find another place, then I naturally start creating like these protectors, these parts of me that come up to make sure that what I'm ashamed of doesn't come out. And that's what we're seeing on social media. Like I don't want to own the shame, so I'll be like, Paul, you have a shitty job, like because I'm like I'm not owning the fact that I'm feeling a little bit insecure, for example, because I got fired.
Right.
And then I'll start pointing something about Paul to make myself feel better, and that's kind of how it goes. Right?
And what happens from there? You point out the thing about me, and then I'll get triggered, and then I'll quickly need to save face, and one of my protectors will show up and say, well, what do I need to do to not feel shamed? Again, without looking at like what's actually going on, I can either deflect it back to my brother over here, or I may take it out on myself, and that sort of self-deprecation, or it may translate to something in my family or my work. So it's an endless cycle when we get into this game of protector battles
and I like what you said. It's all about like how we speak to ourselves too, which is a huge cause of like this mental health spiral that we're all in, and so we're hoping we can use social media for good. We have a few more people joining. There's Mahmoud and
we have David.
David?
Yeah, we have David joining too.
Hey David. We're gonna talk about. We can move to the next section. So we actually wanted to do like a bit of a recap since we're coming on to the last episode of season 1 that's coming up next Sunday. Again, you can join us at gumption.inc/welcome. And we have done like 10 episodes covering different topics. So maybe we should ask people that are online what kind of topics they would like to see. So yeah, if you guys can just type in the chat for those who just joined. We're covering masculinity. We're talking about both the dark side of masculinity, the gold side of masculinity. And we have some topics in mind, and some stories to share and some games to play. So we're gonna be coming, and some music also in the background. Can you guys hear the music, by the way?
We have some topics in mind, and some stories to share.
Oh, I guess there's
We can hear ourselves.
we can hear ourselves.
This is the echo chamber. I want to avoid that.
Everything they warned you about, it's happening right here.
It's happening.
The echo chamber is alive and well.
Yes. So
yeah.
So yeah, what topics do you guys want us to go into today? We sure vibing, doing it for applause.
Maybe we can recap some of the topics that we do cover to give folks a sense of
Arafa,
what realm
welcome.
we're in.
Yeah, so some of the topics that we covered this first season, it's mostly about, so the protagonist, Muscat, is growing up again in Lamu town, and he's growing up with a lot of these ideas on how to be a man. So we talked a little bit about confrontation, how we confront others, and how we use sometimes our heads rather than our hearts, and the difference that it makes. So we talked about confrontation, we talked about violence, revenge. We talked about the relationship between dad and son. We talked about spirit guides.
That was a fun one.
That was a fun one.
That was a
yeah.
really.
You guys want to talk about spirit guides? Because we can. Is there a way for us to mute the Instagram live? Because I'm hearing myself. I'm getting really self-conscious.
Yeah, I don't think so actually, unless I leave.
Oh really? We can't mute Instagram?
So we you know, since part of our ethos here is vulnerability, I'm gonna be vulnerable with you guys right now. This is our first time doing Instagram Live.
Ever.
Seriously, before yesterday, I didn't even know where the button was on the Instagram app. So we're still figuring out some of the technical things, but we thank you for bearing with us. We feel like
Lina! I've summoned my spirit guide. We were just talking about spirit guides and Lina's just joined.
That is a great coincidence.
Hey Bisu.
Right on. Shout out to the sister for sure.
Yeah. Alright, so we're asking you guys, what kind of topics do you want us to delve into today? So again, like, we talked about confrontation, we talked about finding our spirit guides, which can help us find the gold in a man's life.
Yeah.
We talked about the relationship with dads. We covered that actually from multiple angles, including Ahmed Sameh was on that episode, the guy that actually kind of kickstarted African Crossroads. Insecurities and how they lead to actions that end up hurting ourselves or the ones we love. Yes, yes, that's a big one. Insecurities and where they come from. So and that's actually like a so I think like we had like episode 6 was my story about like the insecurity that we get from bullies. So bullies were also like a big theme in the character's life, and the insecurity that he felt towards them, but then also like as doing it for the applause was saying, like how we tend to act from that insecurity and then hurt others thinking we're protecting ourselves, but we're really just like being part of the cycle of violence. So we can talk about that. We got a affirmation from Sherry Be Happy.
Cool.
So
Definitely
I guess I'll have to
maybe we should want to start there.
start with there. Yeah, we can start there. Okay. All right. So we'll dive. Let's just throw out some more topics for people to think about, just in case. So we have like righteousness.
Righteousness is
speaking
a big one.
from the heart rather than from the head.
We talked about aggression, right?
We talked about aggression, but that's could be something we'll dive in now.
Also, spirituality was another one. Finding
spirituality and experiencing God.
Yes.
Yeah, and we actually have our expert here also, Sherry, which who will be bringing on the show. All right, and we have some games around bullshit, and we'll allow you to ask us any question also. But I guess we can go with doing it for the applauses.
Okay.
Suggestion.
Let's do it. So I understand that you have a story of your own that sort of inspired the chapter on the book around bullies.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell the audience about the story? What happened to you?
So the idea of insecurity, like for me, middle school was a very insecure time, probably the most insecure time I've had. And middle school, high school was not my favorite era, let's say. And I felt mostly powerless because I was always surrounded by these people that were more popular, stronger, and they always like had this like fascismo about them. They're like always walking around together in a bundle. And I was, I was much like weaker than them, didn't have like that much support or that many friends that can stand up for me. And so I was definitely dealing with a lot of insecurity there that was being probed by these guys all the time. And it got to a point one day where we finished school and I'm going down to the break. And as soon as I get onto the soccer field, this kid with like this menacing fangs and spiky hair, and he just looked terrifying at that age. And he comes up to me and he just like straight up hits me with his knee in my balls. And it was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced, both physically and emotionally, because I felt so powerless,
Yeah.
And the world just felt so unfair at that point. I felt like this can't go down, I can't go down in history as just the guy who got kicked in the balls. But it woke something up in me. It was like a fiery violence or like anger that was very confused with violence and aggression at that point. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that it is like something's not right. Like the balance has been, shaken. And so it took me about like 2 weeks of brooding until I had an opportunity to kind of get back at him. And so that's what doing it for the applause is saying, when our insecurities kind of like push us to actually be part of the problem or be part of the violence. And at that point, for me, it was like very legitimate that I needed some act of violence to justify this, bring the world back to balance somehow. And so, 2 weeks later, it's like the last period, and it's PE, and this was all happening in Egypt, where I'm from, and I'm running on a soccer field, and I have the ball, and I can either score a goal, and it was like my team needed it at that point, or I can get back at him. And so I remember it being like a very supernatural experience. Like I was not particularly accurate with my soccer shots. Like I could shoot 10 balls and miss 9. But that ball, I was just like sprinting towards him. He's standing goalie. I'm with the ball. There's nothing between me and him. And somehow I just like smashed the ball with my foot, and it's like goes into a gentle curve and like smack in his groin. And so he falls, and things start settling down. I'm like, holy shit! Like this guy's gonna come up and murder me. And I remember him like going up in pain, but then he starts running after me, starts chasing me, and this other guy, was in my way, but he thankfully doesn't isn't able to catch me, and I end up escaping and running away, and I bribe him with like a chocolate or something the next day, and we call it even. But in the story, I let the character kind of like really go more into this idea of going renegade after that event, because it's like the idea is that once you experience aggression, there's something inside you that automatically wants to react.
Yes.
And sometimes
very natural.
Yeah, and at that age I couldn't help it. Like it was just like so wired in me that I need to get back, but I'm also like trying to be calculating, because I know that I can't just like go up and do what he did to me.
Yeah.
I needed some distance. So the soccer ball gave me that. And it felt really nice to get back at him, but it also didn't feel resolved until we actually had that conversation. And I remember like one of the successes of that moment was actually like giving him the chocolate, being like, all right, like, you're cool, I'm cool. And that's when the terror for both of us, I guess, or like the boiling pot of us as like two people kind of started coming back down. So that was, I think, my first aggression trip and realizing, oh, there's this thing inside me that actually can come out at any moment. And so that's kind of like a pivotal point in the book where we use that story in Muscat's life to where he also like starts then defying every other rule too, and like growing into like being a man, but it's from this violence or aggression. So you sharing this story, both like in the book as well as like your own personal story about this, was that, for me personally, was quite freeing, because we don't really go around in life talking about our stories of when we were bullied. In fact, these are stories we tend to bury. Yeah. Even though the impact of them tends to show up anyways, whether or not we are conscious of it. But when you shared your story, I decided to do my own inventory of experiences, with violence as a kid, bullying, whether it was bullying towards me or even my own bullying towards others, and having to take ownership of some of those things. So first off, there's a real power in storytelling, because we all relate to stuff like this. And so it was, just that alone was very freeing. But, I wanted to ask you, so doing it for the applause, actually also mentions one ball to end all balls. Thank you. That actually should be the name of the chapter. Yeah. I called it School Balls. The chapter is called School Balls, but I like this much more. Thank you. So they're talking about, insecurities that lead to actions that end up hurting ourselves. Why do you think that this experience of being, kicked in this way by this person, the insecurities that could cause harm on others didn't take root and become maybe more part of your identity? Like, why do you think, what was left? Well, there was something unsettling about the whole feeling. Like, it's just what I felt even after getting back at him was something that I don't want to feel, because it was fear. Yeah. It was a lot of fear. Even after I thought that I settled the score, I was still in fear. Sure. At first I was in pain and anger, but then I was in a lot of fear of, okay, now he's going to come back at me, and it's going to hurt even more. Right. And so, it felt really bad overall. And I wasn't as satisfied. I was satisfied in the moment, but I wasn't as satisfied immediately after. And I realized, okay, there's still something that's not quite right. Because it could have been easy, because I think for some people, such an experience could turn them even into worse bullies, And I don't really experience you necessarily as a very violent person. Maybe I keep it. Maybe in your creativity, you're a creative warrior. But why do you think that you were oriented more towards you finding like a less you weren't perpetuating this towards others? Why do you think that was like? Are people still seeing us? We may be frozen. No, I think we're still still online, guys, right? It could just be my phone. I think we're still live. Yeah, right. The reason I didn't adopt this as a policy, I think it's like we all have our individual feelings, but growing up around a lot of women, I think helped shape my character. I have a very close relationship with both my sister and my mom, and they were kind of like both the nourishing energies. And I think creativity comes from like a feminine side. So like we were talking about, like women can have a masculine part that's very strong, that's very assertive, that is like gets them to ask for what they deserve. I think with men, like the more I tap into the feminine energy that allows me to create and allows me to connect, allows me to feel at ease in life. And I wouldn't say like, and this is kind of like, a recent journey, but what happened afterwards is that I may have not been aggressive with, by like, kicking people and getting kicked by people after high school, but then the aggression became like more of like competition around the rational brain, or like in business, or in anything that, again, trying to rationalize it always brings more woes to my mind. And I'm someone who struggled with mental health and still find it a challenge. So the idea of like tapping back into our emotions is really what it's about. And I think the more I try to think about things and try to like, you know, balance things myself, the more hardship I put in life versus actual human connection, which makes us feel much more.
I think you hit on something really important. When you talk about, you know, the balance, masculine, feminine, within a person, it sounds like that could be an antidote in terms of healing experiences like this.
Yeah.
As opposed to being polarized on one way or the other, and like maybe adopting more of a shadow thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I actually relate a lot too. A lot of, you know, I never really became a violent person growing up, but there was always like residue from those experiences, and, you know, feeling the pressure to like one up in certain situations. Of course, the pressure of being right, you know, winning, being successful, and when done in an out of balance way, it, you know, leads to, you know, I may win or succeed at certain things, but what's happening in here?
Yeah.
Am I feeling whole? Am I feeling settled? So that's a really interesting idea that, in the presence of like an injustice, bringing balance within ourselves could be a way through to the other side.
I actually think we have a guest that can tell us a lot about that.
That's right, Max.
Yeah, ego alert. Yes. And we actually, like, it's interesting when we talk about the ego, a lot of people want to kill the ego, but the more we look into this and study it, like, the ego has some purpose too, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's just about balancing, and we talk a lot about that even in the context of what we're doing here.
There's actually like we'll probably do a whole episode, maybe on a live stream in the future we could talk about the ego and our relationship to it. You know, we have some of us you know, the ego is everything, and for others of us, the ego doesn't exist. Which I think are both kind of like extreme and kind of, you know, shaky territory to be in. So
how about we enjoy enjoy and invite Sherin Be Happy to tell us a little bit about balancing the masculine and the feminine, because we can't balance them with two dudes just talking all the time. So
that's right.
We have Sherin Be Happy. I don't know if you're ready to join us, but she's also the founder of Healers and Guides.
I may need to do it from there. So
yeah. But is she around?
Sherin
Be Happy. Let's see. We'll invite her and then see.
While we are where are folks signing in from? Those who are with us live, where in the world are you?
Oh, Siri.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey. Sherry, where are you calling from?
Paul's house in Oakland.
Represents.
How are you feeling today?
Fantastic. I really love all the topics, and I have so many questions. But why am I here? What would you like to ask me?
Well, we're talking about balancing the feminine and the masculine right now. And one thing we want to hear from you is like your own endeavor in balancing the masculine and the feminine from a female's perspective. And also like any kind of comments you have on the conversation so far. We're interested in like, talking more about balance and how we can find it. But we figured we can't do it alone. We needed you.
Thank you for coming to our rescue.
I'm glad I can balance you guys out. First, I want to say thank you for talking about things that are not spoken about enough, and for sharing your stories, because I feel like every time I listen to you guys speak about how difficult it has been growing up with all of these restrictions and agreements regarding being a man, or even being a boy. Obviously, it was very hard to just be a boy, and the narrative of don't cry, be tough, be strong. Even me, with all of my years of trying to unprogram my thoughts around masculinity, when you said masculinity, the first thing I thought of was tough. But that's the thing, though. I think that the mistake is that people think that the masculine is men and the feminine is women, right? That's the big mistake, because we are all feminine and masculine. So therefore, when I say tough, actually it's not a bad thing, because there is a masculine toughness in me, and there's a feminine nurturer in me. So when you say feminine, like if you said feminine is about nurturing or about let's say being soft or receiving, that's not a bad thing, right? That's there are attributes of femininity and attributes of masculinity, and the idea is the balance. So for me, for example, there's this, I guess, the masculine bit of my outer appearance, and I grew up the third of 4 girls, so there's a lot of estrogen, a lot of femininity around me, so I feel like there was imbalance, so I chose to be the masculine one. I feel like I was also pushed to be the boy of the family by my father, because I think he missed having a son. But I realized that I just because of that, and also because of conditioning, rewarding masculine behavior, that and a lot of women also that I've spoken to, they say it's very hard to be feminine. It's very difficult to be feminine when the world rewards masculinity. The world rewards being tough.
Yeah.
So it's not
weird,
even
though.
that
it's like a weird.
Sorry?
I was gonna say it's strange, because like the world rewards masculinity, and the world also fears and wants almost vilifies it at the same time. It's like this cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, because
anyways,
like
yeah.
at work, being aggressive is great. Being tough, being the one able to, excuse me, helicopter. Being the one that's able to fire people is like, oh, you're tough, you can do this, you can do the hard jobs.
Sure. But at the same time, people are like, they maybe they respect, or they look, that's how you be like a boss. But also at the same time, like everyone like hates on the boss. Everyone fears and detests that same like assertiveness, the same aggressiveness at the same time. So there is, again, it's like, it feels like we even don't know how to relate to these more sort of shadow archetypes of being masculine.
And we undervalue the feminine characteristics too, right? Because sometimes people think that, yeah, you gotta be tough, you gotta be the one that fires people, but like even like closing a sale is a very emotional thing. Being able to get creative and inspire people is more of a female, like
Feminine,
nourishing kind of thing. So I wonder if these things, we're missing out on the way we do business and the way business is affecting the world these days because of that. Like,
of course.
I see there's something that on the opposite end too, and men being afraid to tap into that, but also even worse, women being afraid to use their immense feminine power.
Yes.
To balance things in the world.
Definitely. The fear of, empathy is seen as one of the most important traits in being a leader these days. And empathy is very much a feminine trait.
Yeah.
So because in order to be a good leader, you have to understand who's working for you. You have to connect with them. You have to, if someone, had a relative pass away, you need to give them space to grieve, right? It's empathy, to be like, they need space. In so many ways, we are moving towards that. So the good news is that we are moving towards that. Like the CEO of LinkedIn, is very inspirational to me, Jeff Weiner. He's voted like the best CEO of like all time. He has like
Really? I actually didn't know
I think
this.
almost a 99% approval rating from his employees, because he did a lot of work on being more balanced in his feminine and masculine, and being more empathetic and compassionate. Like conscious leadership, the whole idea of conscious leadership is a balance between masculine and feminine traits, because it's the same as in fierce and tender self-compassion. There's a masculine and a feminine side to self-compassion. It's not just fluffy.
Yeah, well, okay, tell us more about self-compassion. That's an interesting one that us guys don't know much about.
It's not really in the conversation about, you know, how we should be men.
We're programmed to think that we're not doing enough all the time. So yeah, give us some hope, Sherin. Tell us about self-compassion. And you mentioned like fierce and tender. What is that about?
So it's like the tender is the feminine side of self-compassion, which is like when you're being bad to yourself, you need to first be mindful and aware, and then give yourself some common humanity. Realize that everyone has shit, everyone makes mistakes, we're not alone, you're not bad, you're not isolated, and then give yourself some kindness. So there's like the tender self-compassion of, oh my God, I did something bad, but it's okay, and I shouldn't shame myself for it. I should actually uplift myself through my intense kindness and healing energy. And then there's the fierce self-compassion, which you can imagine like a mama bear. A mama bear to protect, and we were just camping, so this is very real for us because there was fear of bears all around us.
Yes.
The mama bear will do anything to protect her child, right? To protect her cub. She will rip you to shreds. That's fierce compassion, right? Boundaries are an act of fierce self-compassion. Protecting yourself, standing up for yourself at work, that is fierce self-compassion, and that's a masculine thing. It's a masculine trait of self-compassion. So masculinity means to take action, right? That's not bad. There's nothing bad about masculinity. It's all great. And when you reject masculinity or you reject femininity, you reject a part of yourself. And that's the problem. That's the scary part.
I love the distinction and discernment between men and women versus masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
Which masculine and feminine, just like light and dark, just like evil and good, exist, and just like heaven and hell exist in one person, regardless of the gender.
I mean, these are energies that exist all over the universe.
Yeah.
Like before there were gender, you know, human beings, there was masculine and feminine energy making this entire operation sort of goal, you know? And we get to embody those energies within ourselves. And they show up in what we call masculine traits, feminine traits. And so, yeah, it is an important distinction to differentiate between, you know, male, female versus masculine and feminine. Because I think those sort of alignments, those associations, I think limit us as humans in terms of how it can sort of show up in this world. And so maybe like another question we can like put out there is like, how can we as individuals tap into that balance?
Yeah, I think that's quite a profound question, because we're always asking, how can we get more women in the workforce? How can we get more female presidents? But I think that's maybe part of the answer, but like female presidents, there's a lot of presidents too. It's like that are, you know, that have lost their feminine energy and are very much in the masculine. That's how they made it. So that doesn't help either. And it's more about how do we, you know, I'm thinking Margaret Thatcher, who's very much like someone who's been in her masculine energy, has created policies that we're still reeling from. And so it's not just we try to focus on the problem of like, let's get more women in the workforce, but what about all the men that are already in like CEO positions? How can they be more like the LinkedIn CEO? How can they like tap more? And that's kind of what this project is about.
It's a much better way of looking at it. I mean, I still think that we need to hire a lot more women in management and push that, because of course we were behind because of the inequality that existed. But nurturing the feminine side of men while that happens, to prepare for the incoming women, I think is also incredible. Or just to have a nurturing environment. A very simple way of thinking about what to do about feminine and masculine is that masculine is doing and feminine is being. So to be in your feminine, you just need to actually be with yourself and feel your emotions, to nurture, give more self-care, all of these things will improve, or I think balance the feminine side.
So I think this is a good time to do a shout out to healers and guides. Why don't you give us a little bit of hope and you can close on that. Tell us a little bit about healers and guides and what that project is about and how people can find you.
Healers and Guides is a way for people to get access to alternative types of healing in Egypt, but also we have online people, so it's all over the world. And the idea, I think, of healing is actually quite feminine, I think, because it's being with who you are and relating to who you are. And so on Healers and Guides, you can go and you can find so many different kinds of things like theta healing, tarot cards, Reiki, energy healing, Chinit songs, massage. So things that really take care of yourself and help your healing journey. So you can go to Healers and Guides and check out these really incredible people. It's also about educating people about different types of healing that don't require medication immediately. Like you can go and try out lots of different things and see what's bothering you and how you can heal it, or how you can be guided to healing yourself. So that's also the concept of the healer doesn't heal you, you heal yourself, and the guide will guide you through your own healing journey. And I think that's just the most important thing.
And can I just say, Sherin, that like this idea of we are healing ourselves is revolutionary. Like I feel like as long as I've known about whether it's healing arts, and the oldest being like through religion, people going to like clergy or to some sort of place or holy site to find something that they don't have. And then in the modern world, we have psychology, people going to therapists who can fix them. It's really it's a new model around, well, actually the healing is within ourselves, and these modalities that these practitioners help unlock that for us. So I'm really glad that you touched on that, because I feel like that's like the missing link in a lot of sort of healing in the world today. Really recognizing that we have it within ourselves, we are complete. So I think that's really powerful.
We're magical beings with a nurturing mother that is there to heal. So.
Right.
Thank you, Sherin. Thanks for the wisdom.
Yes.
Thanks for balancing us.
Everything was going this way, but
yeah, we're back. Now we're back into balance. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. So guess what? Well, first off, this was a great segment so far.
Yeah. I think we're doing well on the Instagrams.
Yeah, I mean, for our first Instagram Live.
We're not bad. Actually, why don't you guys tell us how we're doing there? Are we talking about things that you want to hear about? Also, we're open to receive our next topic. So what we covered so far is like how insecurity can turn into violence, but then we dove right now with this last segment into the balance between masculinity and femininity versus man and woman, which I think is something I'll be churning on for a while.
Yeah. We have a in between, before we go into our next segment, one of the things we want to do with this Gumption movement is actually support artists in our community.
Yeah.
And also bring in a lot of creativity. And we actually have an artist in our community, Alec, who would like to join us and hang out with us for a little bit.
Sweet.
Maybe we'll hear some tune, maybe we'll have some discussions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get him to join. Alec.
Thanks for doing this, man. You guys are in for a treat. That's a surprise to me too.
Yeah. So I'm gonna introduce Alec. Let's see if I click the right button.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, all right, Alec Martini. Now I'm gonna see when you show up on my device, so I can actually see your face, because we set it up so we can't really see you.
There we go.
There you are.
How's it looking?
Looking great, man.
Looking sharp, my friend.
Yes.
Very sharp as usual.
Hey, back to below. Just joined.
Alec Martini is one of the most prolific musicians that I know. I met Alec 2016 when we were doing the Noon project together. Alec spent a lot of his own time working for injustice for people in the Middle East.
through his talents, through the shows that we did. So, and since then, Alec has grown to be like a dear brother of mine, one of my closest friends. So thank you for joining us today. So speaking of art, so maybe tell the audience a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, man. And I'll support you and your people in all of your endeavors. Omar, it's good to see you, man. I've heard your voice a bunch, but I've never seen your face.
I've heard your music, and I'm excited for this conversation. Good to meet you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Me too. So, yeah, my name's Alec. I'm a producer. I'm an engineer. I'm a songwriter. I work on movies. I score movies. I do pretty much whatever people will pay me to do in sound. So yeah, I grew up being a guitar player, and then later in life sort of came around to playing the keys, playing the drums, playing the bass, just kind of trying to be a one-stop shop. So yeah, right now I'm working on a debut record. Actually, I finished a debut record, and hopefully that's gonna be coming out within the next year or so. Yeah, Paul, you've heard a good amount of it.
The world isn't ready, but the world will be changed once they hear this thing, man. It's brilliant. For those in the audience, buckle up when this one comes out. That's all I gotta say.
Hopefully singles in the next couple months or so. It's been driving me crazy to sit on it, but it's been kind of weird to be an artist. The box,
especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's you figured out a way to balance getting paid with doing what you love, and that's kind of the holy grail of it. And it sounds like we all want to do like these creative things on the side, and it gives us a lot of purpose. But then we have to be practical and take a job that we don't like to get paid for us doing a thing on the side. So yeah, I'm wondering what's your take on the conversation we've been having about masculinity and femininity? Because to me, like, you have to be in touch with your feminine side somehow to get creative, right? Like, there's a lot of like creation energy. That's what it's about, right? So
right.
What's your take on what we've been talking about?
Well, I think that culturally we're in kind of a weird spot where the idea that masculinity is inherently bad has been mainstreamed, and I think that like genuinely couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I know if you look at, I've actually read a decent amount about a lot of this stuff. You go and you look at ancient symbolism. I think the one that I constantly point to, you look at the two snakes, right? The black snake and the white snake. They're curled together, and the idea is but what people kind of don't tend to notice is that there's also those dots that are the opposite color. So in the black snake head, the white dot, and in the white snake head, the black dot. What that symbolizes, what people theorize it symbolizes, is that you genuinely can't have one without the other. They're not two separate entities that balance. They exist within each other.
They exist within each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's very similar to symbolism Carl Jung uses too with the archetypes. Like he depicts like the male and the female as like yin and yang again, or like the anima and the animus are being part of again, like black circle, white background on the opposite.
Right. And if you look at kind of what they mean archetypally in literature, masculine energy is tend to be described as strict order, and feminine energy is chaos. And that's not chaos in a bad sense, because you can't have too much chaos or too much order. Too much chaos is disaster, and too much order, Nazi Germany. So the idea is that to walk the line of truth and peace, you need to be able to find a middle ground where you can plan for the future, but also live in the present. And to do that, you need to be able to have both masculine and feminine energy, and be able to harness both of them, and kind of bring it back around to me, because that's what I know. That is kind of how I try to live my life, kind of how I transitioned from, being a banker in New York City to being a full-time musician. And I made it work by simultaneously maintaining myself and my individuality in the present, but being able to plan for the future. And you can't only exist in the future. It never translates to actions in the present. And you can't only exist in the present because then you're never planning for the future. So the idea is to be able to toe this line, find the yin and yang. And to do that, you need to be able to understand and harness both masculine and feminine. And I'm not saying I'm like gazing at it, but I that's kind of my take. I think that they're both crucial, and I have a kind of a problem with mainstreaming of the idea that neither exist, both in their pure forms. I just don't agree.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because we're talking about ways that we can find that balance within ourselves. What, you know, one great way to do that is to what you just mentioned, balancing being in the present versus balancing, you know, planning for the future is a good way to start to practice that balance between masculine and feminine energy. Alec, this is you're dropping some wisdom on us, friend, like seriously, and we're grateful for it. Wanted to know before we wrap up this segment, any tunes, any music you want to share with the audience, since, you know, this is your this is your craft.
But in the comments, it says like, yeah, your voice is just cutting up, Alec. So
are you guys hearing?
It's coming in and out a little bit. So maybe if you can, I don't know, switch networks or move around a little bit.
I think we lost the audio. I see you.
Yeah, we still see you.
But the audio is silent.
What about now? Does it work?
Oh. Yeah,
we hear you.
Yeah.
Back on LTE, baby. Back in business.
All right. Welcome back to the future. All right. So yeah, I was just saying, if you have any tunes to share with the audience, anything you want to, you know, share from your craft. Okay, I see the.
Sure. I'll play a little.
Awesome.
Okay, this is my baby. This is Cherry Red, as my my friend De Laurenti named it. And Paul, you've seen it. I'll play around for you guys. How about I hear that?
That's cutting out a little bit.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out again.
Back?
Dude, thank you so much. Alec Martini, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, brother. And yeah, feel free to keep watching this.
Of course, man.
As we go to the next set, we're going to get into some deeper topics now. Folks are ready, or we can play some games. Looks like we have about at least 20 minutes for me, but yeah, I could always keep the show going.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
listen, fellas, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I love and respect what you guys do. And I think that in today's day and age, where all the cards seem to be stacked against us, and the world is so small and manipulated because of the internet, and obviously what that brings. I think it's really, really cool to be using the tools that we have at our disposal, to be preaching things like thoughtfulness and forgiveness and individual responsibility, because in a world where the responsibility has been deferred from the individual to the collective, that's why we see a lot of non-action, and it's why we see people so easily manipulated. But what you guys are doing here is the truth, and it's awesome, man. And right now, between 6 and 10 people are getting a little dose of the truth, and it's really refreshing. So it might be small, man, but we're it only takes a few to start a movement. So, and not an internet movement, a real one.
Cool.
You
Brother,
guys,
thanks, man.
yeah. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome, dude.
Thanks again.
Yeah, how can people check out your music, Alec?
Oh yeah, so follow me on this Instagram, Alec Martini Music. I have projects that are coming out left and right. I'm working on some really cool films, and again, the big project is my debut album called Vestige, which is coming out. The singles are going to be dropping soon. It's been done for about a year, which is driving me crazy, but I'm trying to find the right time. So got that coming out. Got a bunch of collaborations. So follow me at Alec Martini Music. I post a lot of fun clips. I have 2 huskies, and I like to mix them in. So if you like dogs and music, come check me out. Alec Martini Music. And
sign me up for that. All right, you guys heard it here first. Thank you so much for the music and for your really inspiring existence and path, man. It really lit me up for sure. It gives me a lot of hope that speaking your truth can actually sustain you if you're willing to go down the path, and it takes us back to the hero's journey. Like, Alec, you have one hell of a hero's journey, man.
Amen.
Thanks,
Amen
man.
to that.
We're trying to make it work. That's it.
That's all we can do. That's all we can do, brother.
I appreciate you. You humble me.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, brother.
My pleasure. I'll get you later. I will. I got you.
All right. For our last 20 minutes, we'll take a vote. We're doing this for you. So if you're whoever is online now, you have the chance to take the last 20 minutes and get us to either share more stories, and we have a lot of good ones. We got to talk. So again, we can talk about the concept of confrontation. We have a really interesting story about that. We can close on that, or we can play the bullshit game also, which you like. So the bullshit game is where you guys ask us a question and we tell you whether it's true or bullshit in our opinion. But we'll tell you why, that's half the fun. That's half the fun. Why? We'll tell you why it's bullshit. We'll not just tell you it's bullshit. Or we'll tell you that it's true. So, Amin Sadiq, welcome.
Yeah, so what do you folks want to do? Story time, or do you folks want to play the bullshit dominator game?
Yeah, so your choice. Story or bullshit dominator.
And for those who this is internship of Gumption. To learn more about the book, the podcast, the blog, and this entire movement altogether, go to gumption.inc. That's gumption.ink/welcome. And it's going to be posted in the chat right now while these votes are coming in.
All right, so doing it for the process, let's play a game.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. Gumption.inc/welcome. So sign up, get on our mailing list, and you'll receive blogs, chapters from the book, as well as these podcast conversations that we've been doing.
All right, so it looks like we're going to be playing the bullshit game. You guys ready for this? So here's how it works. The bullshit game is based on a bullshitometer, which is a very highly sophisticated device that helps the user detect bullshit from truth. And what we want from you is to type into the chat anything. It could be a run really anything, but put in like thank you. Really, really, we really appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yes.
Doing it for the applause.
Doing it for the applause.
So, yeah, so please put in like any kind of phrase or anything that you are wondering about. Like, do emotions make us weaker at work, for instance? Or Do I need to like headbutt with someone that is annoying me at work? Or do, you know, relationship stuff, we love that. So
do I need to sell out in order to survive?
do I need to kiss ass?
Is ass kisser part of my job?
Is the world meant to be dominated by men? Whatever it is. So you guys ask us, we'll answer. We'll use a device first.
Yes.
To give us the truth.
This is a patented device called voltometer. Patents are pending if you want to know the truth. And through the algorithms, which have been coded by coders, we'll be able to tell you if the statement being sent by the audience is actually true or
bullshit.
so. That's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out the truth.
Yeah,
and we're here to set up.
Exactly.
So type your phrase.
Yeah, what we want, give us something.
What we want to know is true or bullshit. We're ready. We have the technology in our hands to tell you.
We're very advanced technology that's based on AI, blockchain, and
neural
networks.
Neural networks.
So we got a little bit of that in there. Yeah, so that's just for our investors. All right, we are waiting for a statement from the audience. We've got 15 minutes left.
Actually, how about this? We'll start one.
We'll start one.
Should I prepare the device? I think so. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there we go. Sweet. We're back. Okay, so Sherry Be Happy posted Men Don't Cry. And so according to the bullshitometer, we found that that statement is bullshit. Okay, so that's, that is an important one to get into. Sadness is an emotion. Grief is an emotion. And being a human being means having emotions. I don't think there's anything more destructive to a person than someone who can't feel their grief. And to give a little bit of color to that, I grew up with the same exact mythology, in my world, which was that, boys don't cry, men don't cry. And as a result, from a very early age, I got cut off from my own ability to feel like sadness. So imagine I would be at really terrible things have happened along the way, and really unable to connect with this idea of sadness. And I'll tell you, during this pandemic that we had, there was a moment where all of us were sort of isolated, and I got to a point where I had no choice but to start feeling, the brunt of those things. And there was a particular weekend where a lot of stuff that I was always sad about but never really expressed. I had that moment where I got to shed a lot of tears from a lot of years. And let me tell you, that was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. Powerful experiences. I've never felt stronger than after that moment. Mm-hmm. Actually, because at the other end of those tears was actually a lot of relief, some laughter. It's this idea that we have shit stuck inside of us, and all tears is getting it out. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't poison us, so it doesn't give us disease. So it doesn't give us stress.
It's important to note that if you don't let it out with tears, it's gonna fester somewhere. Yeah. So emotions don't disappear if you try to keep a strong face and not. This thing's weird.
Yeah. Well, to say that men don't cry is another way of saying men don't deserve to heal. Men don't deserve to be strong. Men don't deserve to be complete.
Yeah.
And what kind of existence is that? So,
and it's interesting when you mentioned like the body keeps the score, right? There's this book that's named that, and it talks about how when you don't express your emotions, it actually festers and could manifest in disease ultimately.
Oh, totally.
We're getting hearts for that.
Yeah, and like real disease, not just like, you know, something that people might. When I say sorry, I shouldn't say real disease. I should mean like even like disease that's physically manifested, not just something on that exists on an emotional level. You know, they say sadness is often stored in the lungs. Folks out there with asthma, with chronic lung stuff, I encourage. By the way, I'm one of those people. Severe asthma, history of bronchitis, and there's a lot of trapped sadness in this body. And I've actually gotten some relief ever since being able to tap more into this. So my fellow lung folks, check your sadness, see what's there. If there are tears in there, get them out. You know, they don't have to be like, go in the privacy of your own room. It's a very healing, very important thing. So
sometimes I find it hard to cry too, but sometimes what I do is I scream. I scream in the car. And there was a particularly tough time for me where that was my only space to do it. I was living with my parents and they would be a little concerned, but my only release was screaming in the car, and it was tremendously helpful.
Oh, totally. Because
there is joy that comes out on the other side of
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anger or sadness. So thanks for that question. I think we have time for one more truth or bullshit question. So the way this works again is that we have this advanced device that we use to detect the truth or
bullshit.
So what's it gonna be? What is the last question that you guys want us to use the device on?
Yeah, what's the burning thing that you would like to know? Is this really true, or is it bullshit? I see Vintage Scarab.
Hey, Vintage
Martha.
Scarab.
That's Martha.
Martha. Hey, Martha.
Yes, Martha. Do you have a statement that you want to know is true or bullshit? Because we will tell you.
Suki Korn.
Suki Korn. We're with you. Thank you for being with us.
Yes. All right. We are coming close to the end. Again, our project is gumption.inc/welcome, or just gumption.inc, and you can subscribe to get our feed every Sunday. But we'll give a chance for anyone to ask us one last question. You can also like open up a topic and we'll discuss it for the remaining 10 minutes. But we are interested in knowing what you guys want to know. All right, who do we have left here? Vintage Scarab.
Vintage Scarab, we're calling you out because you're one of our dear friends. And oh, Gina! You know, there's another like the thing with screen names is you lose identity. Like, who is this person? Gina.
Good boys finish last.
Good boys finish last. That's
all right.
That's a complex one.
That is a very complex one.
That's that one to you. So
all right. Are we talking about sex? Doing it for the applause? Or are we talking about stamina? Or what? Is it about? Are we talking about premature ejaculation? Because that's a really good topic.
It's not, but it's finish last.
Finish last, yeah. Like finish.
Premature will be finishing first.
Exactly. That's why I was saying good boys finish last. So yeah. I mean, the topic could be like you know, premature ejaculation is only for bad boys. For good boys,
finish last.
Finish last.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about? Doing it for the applause? Just a little bit of an elaboration.
Or is it more about nice guys finish last?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I'm not gonna go into the device since we're gonna stop that. But here's the thing: like, the thing about premature ejaculation and also like erectile dysfunction is that we tend to think that it's about good boys, but we forget that it's about the other person too. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out sex, thinking that it's all about me, you know. And if I'm not great in bed, then there's something wrong with me. But then I realized it's highly dependent on who's with me.
Yes. You know, that's an old saying, it takes two to tango. Even horizontally.
It takes two to tango. Yes, exactly. And you, if you're dancing on your own, it's gonna look awkward no matter, no matter like, you know, if the other person isn't following your cues and stepping on your feet, it's gonna be awkward.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
And it's a very isolating thing for men to think that, you know, good boys finish last. I just jumped the gun and assumed we're talking about sex here, but the idea that if you come too fast, then you're not man enough is a really poisonous thought, because it takes for both partners, because it's like you forget that this is about the dynamic, and you forget about also, I spent so much time just being in shame about anything that's sexual rather than telling my partner, like I didn't know how to express what I needed. I think that's the biggest gift. So I'd say good boys, so I'd say this is bullshit. Good boys don't finish last. Good boys ask for what they want in bed.
And otherwise.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting thing about just in general that trope of nice guys finish last. Because there's a compassionate man, there is a grounded man, there's a man who is fair and kind, and then there's also a man who doesn't know his own power, you know, and is afraid of his own strength. So when we think of nice guy, what are we talking about? Are we thinking about someone who's balanced, or someone who is rejecting even a part of themselves and sort of maybe you know, not finding that balance between asking for what they want and this and that. So,
and that takes us back to where we started. Like nice guys there's a part of the gold of being a man, or we can go here. Oh look. I don't know if
I think we're sideways.
We're sideways. Yeah. Okay. So, so let's just finish off by saying that sometimes society wants nice guys to be nice just so that they can be dominated. And part of the goal of being a man is also like asking for what you want and standing up for it. And we hope to keep challenging that. So I think as we close, we want to remind you guys that African Crossroads is happening virtually on October 14th and 15th. You should definitely join us there, 14th, 15th of October. So coming up in a couple of weeks.
Very soon.
And we're very excited about it. I've attended the version in Mombasa, and I'm really excited for African Crossroads to come back to live. Hopefully, Paul will be with us wherever it is on the continent next time.
To be there. Yes.
And hopefully we'll you know, maybe one day we'll do a live version of this. But thank you for the feedback. If you guys have any feedback on how we could have done better, please tell us more. If anyone wants to give us any feedback now, then that was a great time. Again, we are Gumption, or in search of Gumption, and you can find us at gumption.inc. INK. See you guys in African Crossroads.
And if you have any feedback you would like to give on this broadcast, you can find me on Instagram at KidA78. And I'll type that in the chat.
And he's right here in the chat too.
Yeah, actually he's in the chat as well.
So please give us the feedback, guys. And thank you, African Crossroads, for allowing us to take over.
Yes.
We look forward to taking over many more times. And I can do this Instagram live thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun actually.
It is a lot of fun.
Make a lot of new friends.
Yeah.
Play some games.
Yeah. Big shout out for Q. For helping us set this up and for getting us over our Instagram anxieties, and for all the time she spent getting us to appear.
I feel like we were pretty professional. You know, like we've been doing this for a long time.
Yes,
that's kind of what this session has felt like.
That's when the ego starts, like, you know,
Gina,
creeping into us.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Gina.
Yeah, Gina, it's been awesome. Yeah, thanks for the feedback, guys. All right, don't forget African Crossroads, October 14th and 15th.
And gumption.inc/welcome.
You're all welcome.
Sign up for our mailing list, get the content, book chapters from the book, blog posts, and podcast episodes.
Season finale coming up next week.
Hold on to your butts. It's gonna get real.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
Peace.